What's going on, y'all? Once again, it's Coach Hussein, aka the Militant One, and I want to give my thoughts on tonight's fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to try to stay up to watch that fight because I work overnight on the weekends, so got to make sure. I'm a home healthcare aide for my mom, so I'll be there this weekend. But if I'm awake, I'm definitely going to catch that fight. But anyway, I just want to give my thoughts. Most people probably going to see this fight as some sort of fix. They'll probably think that it's contractually obligated upon Anthony Joshua not to knock out Jake Paul. But I've looked at the specs of the fight, so to speak, and it is a sanctioned fight. So this isn't an exhibition like the Tank Davis fight would have been. This is an actual fight. Okay, these guys are actually going to have to either knock each other out or win on points or whatever the case may be. Okay, so on the part of Anthony Joshua, this fight shouldn't last any longer than his fight with Francis Ngannou. Okay, that fight ended, I believe, in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. And he got him out of here quickly. He didn't waste time or play around with him like Tyson Fury did. He got Francis Ngannou out there quickly, okay? Which is what Tyson Fury should have did when he fought him. Excuse me, y'all. Now, on the part of Jake Paul, he can't really lose this fight, period, point blank. Insofar as, we're not talking about the actual act of losing, but he's in a win-win anyway because if he loses, if he gets knocked out by Anthony Joshua, which he should for all intents and purposes, people are going to look at him and say, well, he never had no business being in the ring with Anthony Joshua anyway. If the fight somehow goes the distance, okay, then, at the way you look at it is, most people are obviously going to say that it was a fix. They're going to say that Anthony Joshua was paid not to knock him out. Or we can just accept the fact that he was actually skilled enough, quote unquote. And you know what? I'm not even going to say quote unquote because Jake Paul has actually put in the work. Okay, one thing we gotta do is give respect to Jake Paul, whether we like it or not, or at least we have to acknowledge the fact that he's taking boxing seriously. Forget his choice of opponents. Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, all these guys that he's faced that have been over the hill, with the exception of Tommy Fury. Okay, we gotta accept the fact that he actually does put in the work. Okay, like you can't escape that. You can't ignore that. He actually trains actively as a professional boxer. The downside of him is the fact that he hasn't actually fought anyone that is a boxer that is actually a threat to him until now. Okay, Tommy Fury is about the only exception to that rule. Mike Tyson would have been an exception to that rule, but along his training, he ended up getting injured or suffering some sort of sickness, one or the other. It was a sickness, actually, he suffered. So he didn't really go into the fight with the type of strength and stamina that he needed. Plus, he was also old. Okay, I think that's something we just got to accept. Tyson at that age wasn't really going to show shades of the Mike Tyson that we saw against Roy Jones, or for that matter, in his prime. Okay, he's far out of his prime. Okay, but as far as it concerns Anthony Joshua got to end this fight in about I would say this fight shouldn't go no longer than 3 rounds, and I'm just being generous with that. Okay, because Anthony Joshua is a legit boxer. Whatever we want to say about him, and I don't think people really have, outside of his fights against Usyk and the one fight against, his first fight, against Andy Ruiz, okay, Anthony Joshua has proven that he can actually fight, okay? But as far as this fight with Jake Paul is concerned, this fight should not go any longer than 3 rounds. And once again, I'm just being nice, okay? Because unless he just wants to just go in there and make a quick buck and just end it in the first round, which he is capable of doing, like I said, this fight should not last long, okay? Now, I'll give it to Jake Paul. Jake Paul, if he's smart, he's not going to try to go in there and, try to put belt to ass with someone like Anthony Joshua who could legitimately knock him out, okay? If he's smart, in fact, I was actually watching, and I got to go back and finish watching Usyk versus Joshua 1. If I'm Jake Paul, that's the fight I'm watching because he's about the same height and build of Usyk, nowhere near the skill level, but he has a similar build to Usyk. And if I'm him, I'm looking at what Usyk did in those fights, and I'm going to try to do the same things and add my own little thing into it. Also, if I'm Jake Paul, okay. Now I don't see Jake Paul knocking out Anthony Joshua. I don't see that happening at all. Okay, I just don't. All right. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I just don't see any type of way in which it could happen. But one thing I think we do got to give Jake Paul props for is the fact that he makes people want to see him. You know, when it comes to fighting, you want to see two things in a fighter. You want to see, just from a fan perspective, you want to see this guy get knocked out or you want to see them knock them out. Because it ain't a lot of people that watch boxing, even to this day, that watch boxing and check for skills of a fighter. They don't really check for that. Okay. And this is one of those fights where you're not really going to look for a skill. I'm going to look for skill when it comes to Jake Paul. I'm going to be honest about that. I'm going to see if he actually does what he needs to do to avoid getting knocked out and secure the win. I'm definitely going to see that because me, when I watch fights, that's what I look for. I look for skill. Okay. I look for ring IQ. I look for technique. I look for footwork. I look for all that stuff. Okay. And I'm just going to say it one way or another, both of these guys going to end up doing the rhythm step. Okay. If y'all know who Barry Robinson is, and you know what I mean when I say rhythm step. Okay. Shout out to Coach Barry Robinson. But I just wanted to quickly give my thoughts on the fight. If, like I said, should I be up? I'm going to watch the fight. It's going to be on Netflix. So this is going to be entertaining. But like I said, this fight should not go past 3 rounds. If it goes past 3 rounds, Joshua, I don't know what to say about Joshua. I really don't. Okay. That would let me know that he's kind of like just in it for the money, as opposed to actually just straight up knocking this guy out and putting what would essentially be an end to Jake Paul once and for all. Okay. Just want to make this video, put it out there. These are my thoughts on tonight's fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. There's some other fights on there also. I think Anderson Silva is supposed to be fighting Tyron Woodley. I'm not too sure about that. I didn't look at the full card. The only fight that I know about is Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. But what are your thoughts, okay? I want to see y'all go down in the comment section. I want to see what y'all think, what your expectations are. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, peace. And as always, train daily.